We're back with Insight Club, and today we're discussing the assumption that we are alone in the universe, or aren't we? Stay tuned.
The first rule of Insight Club is you don't talk about Insight Club. You do Insight Club. The second rule of Insight Club is the only assumptions we make about one another are that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. The third rule of Insight Club is you check all your other assumptions at the door. We hope these conversations will bring you insights that incite you to action. Welcome to Insight Club.
I have to just say, we might have an opportunity to go see the Pixies live this summer, and I'm so excited.
That's so cool.
I don't know if it will work out, but it's like on our little whiteboard in the kitchen.
I really hope you can go, and please update me on that.
Yeah. So where is your mind today?
Yeah, so as always, we always ask each other, where's our mind for these episodes? And I've been thinking of the UFO sightings or drone sightings that have been more on the media lately. And the reason why I brought this up to you was not just because it's happening right now, but I've seen those before. And this is one of the reasons why I feel like this is being put as a specific thing in US right now, but has been happening everywhere in the world for a long time. A lot of people see similar events, so it's kind of hard to say that it's a single event in one place, but still it doesn't make it being like, oh, this is UFOs. This is the assumption, right? Oh, this is alien, or this is governmental. This is I don't know what, drones.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So yeah, this is what's in my mind. What's on your mind?
Well, there's so much baggage around it that I think we lose sight of the scientific process, the scientific method. Like, what would be a rational response? I see something, I don't know what it is, let me investigate. Is that the response we have? No. It's been so like drilled into our psyche to dismiss people who say, hey, I've seen something and I can't explain it, right? And that initial curiosity of like, what is that in the sky, immediately translates to, you're a cuckoo. You know, you're making stuff up. And I'm like, wait, I'm not making anything up. I'm asking, right? So this conflation of question with conspiracy is rampant. And it is, I think, really easy to see and highlight in this area. And so I think this is such an important topic to talk about, because what I hope it will do for all of us is remind us that curiosity is not equal to conspiracy.
Good one.
Right? But that's what happens. Like, somebody goes like, I saw something and I can't explain it. And they're labeled as, you know, an unreliable witness. Even people there's a long history of people working as planes, as, you know, military, I said as planes, as pilots, you know, like, I'm a plane. Maybe those people are a little off their rocker if they think they're an airplane.
If I had said this, I would blame on not being my first language.
You know, I'm having some interesting things happen around language. Like, I'll see videos of myself and I'm like, oh, I just said a completely different word than I thought I said. I'm having some language, some fun language things happening. But, you know, high-ranking military pilots, astronauts, people who are at the top of their skills and abilities, right, have been silenced, had their careers ruined, you know, threatened, all of these things, because they went, I saw something and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And that is a really problematic way to run a society. That means we're not going to get actual advancement. That means we're not going to get actual evolution. If when somebody says, wait, this is brand new, we don't know what this is, let's investigate, if the response is, it doesn't fit what we think life looks like and our assumptions, so you must, we're going to deny your experience and make you think you didn't actually see what you saw. And like that. So I love this topic of UFOs and UAPs and drones and what's going on out there. I mean, for me, there's the question of, are we alone, and all of that, the stuff about the cosmos that is super fascinating. But also I think it really shines a spotlight on like the current state of our culture and like
Yeah.
how we run society and what we say is true and what we say is cuckoo. It shines a light on that, and it shows how if enough people tell you your experience didn't happen, then that's supposed to weigh more than your actual experience, right? They're saying you can't trust your eyes, your ears, what you went through, even if a lot of other people have witnessed the same thing. Like, you should trust the assumptions of the society and what we have said is true over your own experience and not ask questions.
Yeah. I feel like ufology has been like the witches burning in the last
Yeah.
few decades,
Yeah.
uh, or quite a few decades, uh, to the point that people who actually saw it, like without even saying like, "Oh, I saw an alien" or something like that, but I saw these lights that weren't planes, that weren't explained by like its satellites, that weren't Starlink, that weren't any of this, and that moved in strange ways that planes don't do.
Yes, that's the key thing. Moving in ways where we're like, unless there are new rules of physics that I was not apprised of, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, uh, to the point that people who see these things like feel like relieved when someone else is with them and can say, "You're seeing that as well, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going crazy.
Yeah, I'm not
You're seeing."
hallucinating. Yeah.
We got a group of friends a while ago because this was happening here in my state, and interestingly, I don't know, I'm not saying it is related, but we our brain works in patterns, so it's hard not to think that it could have some correlation. Interestingly, it happened a little bit before the floods that we had in here.
Mm.
And it was like every night, every night the lights were there, and to the same point, we were looking, and we weren't assuming like it's aliens or it's governmental, but we were like trying to guess, and there was a lot of people in other cities as well seeing, so we there were people like trying to triangulate to see how far it was, because you can't know even the size of it. But what happened in Jersey was quite interesting, because people are saying that there were things like to the size of a car,
Mm.
and the media is reporting as drones.
Mhm.
And we know the size of drones. Of course, there's governmental drones that are bigger, but it could that then it comes to the assumption, right? Um, some people directly go and assume like it's aliens.
Yeah.
The media comes and assumes it's drones. The police, uh, everyone that is taking care of security assumes that this must be a menace to
Yeah, like
the
a
nation.
foreign power. Yeah.
Yeah, so it must be from an outside government,
Yeah.
right? So there's all these assumptions like, should we fear? Should we uh, welcome them? Should we just trust the government that they know what it is? And yeah, I'm just bringing up assumptions.
Yeah. It seems like for sure when there's something anomalous like that, we should investigate. Like that seems like the obvious thing to me is investigate. How can we find out more information? And anytime there's something that is very surprising to the populace, but leaders respond by saying, it's fine. I think it is safe to assume they know something we don't. And why are they keeping that information from us? Well, there could be valid reasons for keeping information, right? So, not creating a panic, or like if we know what it is and we have a solution and we don't want to panic people, like, okay, I think that could be reasonable. Do I have a lot of trust that that's what it is? Versus like another question to ask would be, who benefits from not investigating? Who benefits from us not just having scientific rigor? You know, since 2020, science has been this absolute catchphrase. Trust the science. Trust the science. People say it again and again and again. Okay, you want me to trust the science? What science means is an investigative process where I form a hypothesis based on what I know, and then I test that hypothesis and I come up with conclusions, and then I analyze those, and then I see how it all fits together. So from the same, from the same administration that brought you trust the science, here comes don't ask questions.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring up one thing that you brought here as well, like the possibility of this being distraction. But I feel like, yes, it can be distraction. I'm not saying that all of these things would be distraction, because being all over the globe, that would indicate that there is something bigger than just the US government behind it. And I'm not saying it's not a possibility. But
look at the World Economic Forum. I mean, it's clear that there are power structures beyond nations.
Yeah.
Right. Like they don't even try to hide it. They're like, a bunch of us rich people are all getting together to decide the fate of all of you turds, and we're not even hiding it. We're like flaunting it. Like we're on TV getting out of our jets, meeting to decide your fate.
Wow. You already brought it up, but I'm just bringing possibilities, right?
Sorry, I get my panties in a twist over those guys.
I know. And well, part of the whole point of this podcast is the question, right? So it might be that we bring more questions and answers in here, and everyone is free to do their research and ask their questions and be curious about it and get to their own conclusions, and maybe not just research on the internet, but maybe look at the sky at night as well. And see what you're seeing with your own eyes, because at this point you might see things anywhere in the globe.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by like when people reveal their intentions through projection. And there was this movie that came out a couple years ago called Don't Look Up. Did you see it?
I've heard about it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of forgetting what it is, like what the plot is. I think it's aliens, but it's something. Yeah, I guess it's aliens. It's something that comes and is, eventually just destroys all of Earth. Maybe it's a comet. I don't remember. That's funny, but it's something from the sky, and eventually, like, the whole world is destroyed. And the movie is very clearly, like, in an obvious way, not trying to hide it, lampooning like the conservative party in the US, like the Republican Party. And they do this by having characters who are supposed to represent that party coming up with this idea, like, to save everybody is don't look up. In other words, just don't look at the problem, and then it won't affect you. And I always think it's so fascinating when, so clearly the movie is made by filmmakers who are like, everything that's wrong with the world is because of Republicans and because of conservatives, right? Like they're not trying to hide that point of view. But they're telling us what they're doing. Like they're projecting the anger onto somebody else. And it doesn't matter which party it is, because it's like it's all really just the same people giving money at the top, and then they're like, "Do you want the blue team or the red team?" I mean, it's all a farce. It's it's all theater. So this is not about which of them is like less, obnoxious, but like they're telling us very clearly, this is our strategy. They're blaming it on somebody else in the movie, like, ha ha ha, these guys are the bad guys because they're telling you don't look up. But no, that's just the strategy. And now, like a few years later, that predictive programming is being played out. We're like, just don't look up. They're just drones. Just don't look up. And you talked about distraction. And I mean, I feel like this is a great thing to bring to the table, this idea of predictive programming. And why did we have all of those zombie movies? Like, what are we being prepped for? What are we being prepared for? And how are our assumptions being manipulated, or are new assumptions being planted that are gonna make us more pliable for whatever the next, phases of, I don't know, getting us to forget we're shards of the divine, and trying to make us think we're just consumers.
Yeah. Well, I feel things are getting more and more complex because, like we were saying about the like just silencing people and so on in the past, it was easier to see how things were controlled by silencing and so on. And apparently this is not working like this anymore, or at least now maybe it's time that they want people to know more things, or maybe people are not as fearful of the idea of alien life anymore. Uh, but the thing that gets me thinking a little bit is the narrative. Like you mentioned, the words that we choose, like, right? Like the media calling these drones. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know if you got to this in the story, but I think it was a New York airport that was closed because of the drone sighting. So the thing got a little bit big. Okay.
Yeah. I did read a part that there were people who were following along with flight paths, and they're like, there are no registered aircraft fly, right? And the response was like, these are planes and you're not recognizing planes. And there were people who were actually following along with flight paths and were like, there's nothing scheduled to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that I question is, like, they started using the word drones. In the past, me being like a proud conspiracy theorist, I feel like most of the conspiracy theories become true at some point. What the media used to say, you could think it's probably the opposite. In these cases, so it was easy to think like, yeah, okay. But I feel things are getting a little bit, maybe they're getting a little bit smarter now, and they know that people discredit the media. So it might be that they say drones, feeling like, of course, people think if they're saying drones, probably is the opposite. But wait, they might be saying this so that we think it's the opposite. So it might be drones.
Yeah. No, there's this whole thing in the Illuminati trilogy, Robert Anton Wilson, and it's like 5 layers of the lie. Right. So it's like, here's the obvious lie, and then the thing behind it. And so like some people work their way, but no matter what, it's a mind fuck.
Yeah.
right? Because then you're like, well, if it's like the scene in The Princess Bride where he's got the poison and he's like trying to logic it out, but like, so, but you would have known I'm not a fool, so I clearly cannot choose the glass in front of me, right? And it just goes back and forth and back and forth and never comes to a conclusion. And it turns out both glasses were poisoned, right? um, but this thing, the mental gymnastics of like, okay, so if they're presenting that's the obvious lie, so then it's this, but then I can't believe that either, because then that would be the lie they know it would get to, and we go around in circles, and maybe that's part of it. It's like,
And maybe that's the intention.
yeah, I think for a long time, there's been a lot of effort and energy behind making sure we mistrust our own senses. And that's so damaging. Like when you can create a schism in somebody where we can't, I mean, this is what happens to people who are in abuse situations. Is they come to think, I can't trust my own instincts. I can't trust my sense of right and wrong. I can't tell up from down. I have to rely on what this person is telling me, and they're right and I'm wrong. And there's so many parallels between our leaders and the citizenry and, an abuser and the abused person, where it's like, I'm going to gaslight you. I'm going to pull the rug out from under you. If you think it's left, it's right. If you think it's up, it's down. And so saying to somebody, you can't trust your own five senses is such a brilliant way to undermine their autonomy. And I mean, so maybe it just happens to be that like UFOs are a thing that's in our mind. It's a thing we'll pay attention to. If it were something out in the ocean, maybe not as many people would care. But we know if it's lights in the sky, a lot of people are gonna, follow that.
Well, since you brought this up, there was some lights coming in and out of the ocean as well.
Oh, interesting. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the ocean. I mean, they're testing sound weapons and killing whales and all kinds of messed up stuff. And there was just a tsunami warning off the coast of California, based on an earthquake in a place where there aren't normally earthquakes. Like, yeah. It was, everybody knows about, not everybody, but like if you live in this area, you know about the San Andreas fault line, and everybody's kind of waiting, like it's due for a big one. This was a totally different plate. It was just, like, where did that 7.4 earthquake come from?
Yeah. Actually, this makes a lot of sense, what you brought up about abuse, because even if we assume this is some sort of psychological test, it is a form of like psychological abuse in mass scale.
Yeah.
But that for sure wouldn't be like disclosure.
Right. Well, and then these questions come up. Is this something that was planned and is being intentionally done to mess with us? Or is this something happening out of the control of our leaders? And then they're like, how do we optimize this? How do we spin this? There's a really great episode of The X-Files with Jesse Ventura as a man in black. And it's a story about these two teenagers in a car, and they get abducted and all of these things. And Jesse Ventura comes into everybody who's involved in the story in this big menacing, threatening way. He's this big dude. He's a wrestler, and he comes in and he goes, what you think you saw was actually the planet Venus. And that's just the standard line to everybody. They're seeing like lights and spaceships and all this stuff. They get, like, they have this whole experience, but his line is like, what you think you saw was actually the planet Venus. And it's such a great stand-in for, you don't need to trust your own. I mean, the message there is like the people in authority saying, you don't need to trust your own senses. We'll tell you what you saw.
I thought it was so interesting that he said this. I watched a few episodes of X-Files when I was really young, so I pretty much don't remember the stories. I do remember asking my mom all the time, like, if aliens existed or not, because I needed to know.
And what was her response? What did she say?
She didn't know, and that was the break of my mom knows everything. And just pretty much since I was 3 years old, I assumed that nobody knows anything. Um,
Wow, this
yeah,
had a big impact on you.
yeah, it did. Especially
Wow.
because I was having nightmares with aliens, and I needed to have answers. Um, but anyway, that's like, yeah, way early to disclose. um and but the thing that got to my attention with this is that there was one of these objects that is in one of these images everywhere, that I heard some people saying like, oh, people are saying that this is an UFO or something like that, or even a portal. Some people were saying that it was, but this is actually the planet Venus. I was like, oh, okay, same line.
um and or the other classic one is it's a weather balloon, right? It's a weather
But
balloon. And it's
for me,
this
it's
way.
so weird because I see the planet Venus like every day in the sky. It's like,
Yes, yes. So what it does, the weather balloon, the planet Venus, and now drones, what they do, what all of those do is say, look, there are things in the sky, and we know that those things exist. We don't know, or we don't want to know about other things existing. So why won't you just be satisfied with saying it's one of these things we know exists? And then you'll say like, well, because what I saw doesn't look or move in any way like those things we know exist. Like there's no correlation between this and a weather balloon. It doesn't have any of the qualities of a weather balloon. It moves in ways like, I mean, Grady and his whole family had an experience where they saw things and they were like, the laws of physics don't work that way. Just like instantaneous movement and like stopping on a dime and just stuff where you're like, somebody has different rules of physics than we do, because that's nothing that should be able to happen given what we know about the way
yeah,
craft move through the air. So, if you have an experience where you go, this is outside of anything that has been explained and that we know, and somebody says, yeah, but that's inconvenient. So let's just say it's something we do know exists, like the planet Venus or a weather balloon or a drone. And so, I mean, I almost see that this could be expanding the gaslighting to include, I mean, drones are an amazing technology. And I certainly don't know the latest things they're doing, especially at a military level. I don't even know the latest things they're doing at like a home, private citizen level. Like I'm just out of the loop. Right. So, that seems plausible. Like, oh, we have this new technology. But it's a way of saying that's been solved, even though we haven't done any investigation. And when that door gets slammed in your face, I think that's when it should stir up some assumptions. Oh, I'm talking about something that is inconvenient for people for some reason. I don't know why.
yeah,
Maybe it's their drones from a foreign power and they're like, we don't want to panic the public, or maybe it's their own drones and they don't want us to know that they're messing with our weather and causing floods. Maybe it's aliens and they're like, we haven't made a plan yet for how we're gonna talk about this, so we're keeping it under wraps. But it is right for us here to assume that we need to investigate more. Like when somebody closes the door in our face, it's like, okay, there's something more there. Would you say that's a reasonable assumption?
that is a reasonable assumption, because if they don't even want to talk about it, especially the people who should be interested in discovering what is it,
Yeah.
um, then either they're hiding something, or they're like trying to fearful and trying to negate whatever it is, right?
Just don't look up.
Pretend, yeah, exactly. Pretend it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
And
I think
the language is important, right? Because now it's become, as you were saying, widespread. It's drones, it's drones, it's drones, it's drones, it's drones. So we don't know what it is, but it's been given a name that falls into a category that feels relatively safe because it's at least known. Like, even if it's drones from a foreign country, like, we'll go to war with them and that, we know what to do. Like, this is a known thing. But it's so unhelpful to categorize something and give it a name when we don't know what it is.
Yeah. And thinking of the idea of, oh, go ahead.
It's just now it's in our collective psyche. And so if you say, what's this mysterious thing happening over New Jersey? People go, oh, duh, it's drones. Didn't you hear?
Yeah. Trust the science.
Yeah, trust the subject. Trust the propaganda that's been repeated again and again and again.
Yeah. But coming back to the idea of distraction, and predictive programming, I've been thinking of, and of course, this might be just that, like I said, our brains make correlations. We are always assuming things as well. For a while now, and I only got to see this because I was doing my research on it. People have been using drones, like with lights, to create light shows. So like the EDM DJ Alok is one that has been using drones, and some of the things that he does in his concerts they look a lot like alien spacecrafts going up and down, and so a lot of things with pyramids as well, which we can correlate to other occult things that we know. Anyway, a lot of this stuff, it's pretty interesting to see. It looks cool, but it does look like, oh yeah, if you're seeing something like this from a certain distance, you could think that these are like alien stuff, but it's drones. And even like more complex stuff, like they've done, I think it was in Japan, like a dragon with drones. It's pretty crazy. I have no idea how they've done this. They have been doing some drones that can look like a circle, actually, with the lights all around. So it can you can project a lot of things and make people think, like almost holographic, can make people think that this is something else. But also we are in an age where AI can create a lot of stuff. So now we're not only the things that people are actually seeing and that it's actually happening, it's out there, but also we can't trust every image that we see out there, because some things can be generated by AI or created with, I don't know, some form of editing.
Yeah.
So
I'm still in disbelief at the was it Glastonbury? Where was the Tupac hologram? What music festival was that at?
Yes.
And I was like,
yes.
I mean, when you watch video of that, I'm like, and that was a few years back. I'm like,
Yes.
I am actually more inclined to believe that Tupac is alive and he came out on stage and they shone lights on him to make it look like he was kind of see-through, like he was in Scooby-Doo, then that's a hologram. Like, it's trippy stuff.
Yeah.
And it puts me in mind of the fact that they're like the best technology has been for centuries saved for military purposes. And that, so this is like something as simple as batteries. Like, the military has way better batteries than we have in terms of how long they last and the efficiency and all that kind of stuff. Like, this is not a theory. This is a fact. Like, the military gets the best technology. And so that what that means is there's always technology at least 4 or 5 steps ahead of what has come into the the mainstream. And we have some really amazing technology right now. So like what's 5 steps ahead? Well, that could be those drones, and maybe they've had those drones since whatever, that 80s or 90s or whenever it was that like Grady and his family had this experience. Or, like maybe they've had them for decades and been creating these things. So absolutely, that could be a possibility. And what's always interesting to me is when people say, oh, any UFO or UAP can be explained by military technology. I'm like, okay, that still doesn't, our inquiry shouldn't stop there.
Yeah.
Why do they have it? What are they using it for? And why are we not being told about it? Right? It's kind of this thing of like, do we live in a simulation? So some people will be like, there is no God and we just live in a simulation. And I'm like, okay, but why would you stop asking there? Like, who created that simulation? What's after that? What's beyond that? Because we might like, that could be a possibility. There's like some interesting things that point toward we are in a simulation, but that doesn't end the questioning.
For sure. If you're happy with the answer, okay, this is all simulation, and the question stops there, then you're not questioning.
Who created the simulation?
Who created the simulation? Yes. That's the whole point.
Yeah. So, I mean, you and I have had this conversation. I don't know if we've had it on air, but the idea that our leaders and overlords have gotten really efficient. And so now they're able to do the combination, like test and mess with us. Like it's the psyop for a reason, right? So it's like, we have this goal, we want to, create this outcome. And at the same time, we can test like how much bullshit will people believe?
And not only that's a great point, because it's not just how much bullshit, but how people are going to behave. If something like this happens. Will they turn to the government and ask for solutions? Will they take action and try to, I don't know, put these things down like some people were doing?
People were shooting at them.
Yes.
Never ever shoot into the air. Bullets fall.
Yes.
Not to mention whatever they're shooting at. If they hit it, that's going to fall too.
Yeah. And there's reports that one of these things fell. And so I don't know what's happening about that. That's something else to follow. But there's that. And or people, how much people are going to fear and trade their freedom for that.
Yeah.
Or how much people are going to rebel and maybe create anarchy.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's like a rectal thermometer to take the temperature of the zeitgeist.
Yeah. Good analogy.
I think that's exactly right. How will people respond? And so how are people responding? Like a lot of folks are saying, it's drones, it's drones, it's drones. Now we just know it's drones. And it's like, wow, I see this speeding up. How quickly we go from, oh my God, this is something totally brand new and frightening to, oh, it's just regular. So it took a little bit longer to go from like, wait, you're telling everybody to stay locked inside their houses and like this is completely new. Like that took a little bit longer to become normal. But it seems like that time span is getting shorter and shorter of the thing that's brand new, should cause some concern, should make us go like, wait, what? Can you give me more information, please? We go right from that to like, oh, duh, it's drones. And that to me is terrifying because the smaller that time gap gets, the more weird, wacky stuff can be done to the population without us batting an eyelid.
Yeah.
I'm like so interested in this story now and wanting to see what comes of it. But also put in mind of like, over a year ago, we had disclosure, we had ET disclosure from like several major world governments. And where is that knowledge in the collective conscious?
And it's very interesting that the disclosure was done like pretty much quietly, like there
Yeah.
wasn't much
In the
coverage.
middle of a global pandemic.
Yeah. So it's like we're dropping this now that you're distracted, so
Yeah.
that, so even like what's happening right now, is it part of like, let's see how people are going to react so that we can tell a little bit more, or something is coming and we need to be prepared for it? Or is it distraction from something else? Because it could be.
Yeah. Or backtracking, right? Because then it would be possible to say, oh, those things that we thought were UAPs were actually just drones. I mean, I can't wait till they're like do the revisionist history and they're going to be like the sightings in the 16th century of weird stuff happening in the sky and the Vimanas from ancient India. They're going to be like, those were just drones.
It wow. This could turn in a very weird Mandela effect kind of thing. Like, let's just rewrite history everywhere, and like even like have people with smartphones and I don't know, projected everywhere, and maybe the not just the Vimanas but the avatars from ancient Hindu texts might be just
Those were just holograms
projected.
of Tupac.
Yes. Wow.
I think there's such an important invitation here back to what you said, looking around us, being aware and being in community.
Yeah.
You know, connecting with other people and like, are you seeing this as well? Walking outside of our houses and looking at the sky and going, you're seeing this too? We had an experience one time where we really were seeing the planet Venus. And we were at the beach where we used to live, and you could build fires on the beach. There were a lot of people with fires. And you know that you know what heat waves do, where it causes that like wave, right? It's why you get mirages. So we're
Yeah.
standing on the beach and we're looking out and Venus is there, but it looks like it's darting back and forth like this. And we were staring at it for the longest time. Like, what is going on? Are we having an encounter? And somebody else walked up and we're like, look at what's going on. We're all looking at it going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I don't remember if it was in that moment or a little while later, Grady was like, oh, there were all those heat waves from the fires. Maybe there was something else that came into the field of vision and we're like, oh wait, that's moving too. Okay. And so I really do think it was the planet Venus and it was the wavy lines. But it was such a different experience between the two of us standing there and then when a third person we didn't know came up. And it was like when that guy walked up and he saw it too, there was that feeling of relief you were talking about, where we're like, okay, you're sharing our reality. And think of all of the effort that's been put into silo our realities. You know, you like Google gives you absolutely completely different feedback on the same search as I would make based on our search histories. You know, Google is not simply giving back to us an objective, this is the thing, it's giving back to us what it thinks we'll be interested in, right?
Yeah.
Slash what people are paying to, you know, put at the top of the list, not even to mention like holding back on things that might be inconvenient to however it's making a profit. Like that's a whole other can of worms. But just at a very basic level, it's like, oh, Megan's interested in this kind of thing and Lise is interested in this kind of thing. So it's giving us, our realities are becoming so siloed. If you watch one news channel versus another news channel in my country, you think we're living in totally different realities. Like people go, how can the people who disagree with me think that? I'm like, have you watched their news source? Like try watching somebody's news channel and then you'll understand exactly why they think what they think, because that reality is very strong, it's very real. So maybe the most, like my insight is the most important thing we can do is be in physical connected community together and share reality with one another.
Yeah. And not outsource our senses,
Yes.
right? Uh,
Yeah.
it's so important to be able, like what you said about we're being trained to not trust our senses was a big insight, because yeah, it doesn't matter if it's distraction, if it's preparation, if it's actual uh aliens or whatever other thing that is the most important thing is, are we able to trust ourselves instead of just trust some outside source? And are we able to, when I say ourselves, I'm not seeing just like I trust myself and you trust you, but also, are we able to trust the people close to us
Yeah.
with these things and not feel like this is too private to share, so I need to keep it to myself? Can we trust our
Mm.
communities, like we were saying, to actually have a shared view and not isolate ourselves in a bubble?
Oh, I hope so. That feels really important. And I know what my insight homework is like, because I've had this experience recently talking with very good friends about spirituality. And, when the friend is like investigating something I haven't investigated, and it brings up fear in me, right? Like, oh, are we no longer going to have the shared reality? And so, what I've been conscious of doing is just staying in curiosity and not jumping to the assumption that it means we don't see things the same way. We'd be like, oh, tell me more about that. And the last time this happened, it ended up with like, oh my God, I have that exact same experience, but I was putting it in different language,
Yes.
which is like, oh, that's the best feeling. Like, oh, yes, 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 I know exactly what you mean, but these are the words I was using, and these are the words you were using.
And then you end up having more ways to describe things, like expanding your vision instead of like feeling like you need to protect the way you see things.
Yes. So I really want to recommit to being open-hearted, especially with the people who are in my intimate circle, so that we can share reality and I can learn, like, you're seeing something I'm not seeing, so please tell me about it.
Yeah.
Instead of, that's the
Mm.
planet Venus, that's a drone.
Yeah. Both being curious and staying open to things that we can't explain, right? But also, there's another thing that I feel like we can bring to it, being that some people might meet us with this kind of reaction of like, are you kidding me? This is just that, or this is just that. Maybe even instead of shutting down in these moments, being able to say, hey, I'm trusting you with something that I have no certainty about. Can we
Mm.
explore this together?
Oh, I'm trusting you with my openness. Can you please honor that, and we'll find a way to meet.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a beautiful prescription for being able to stay open and reminding other people to be open. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Ha ha, whatever psyops you're trying to do is having the opposite effect. It's making me love people more, be more curious.
And that's what's meant to be, right? We need,
Which
if
could
we
be
are in
another possibility, because that's the whole thing about the Illuminati trilogy. It's like, it's really like all these layers. And so then at a certain point, you're like, are these people actually working for the betterment of humankind, but doing it through all these messed up things so that you come to the conclusion yourself?
and it might be, because if we assume that always one and always working for the betterment of humanity and for us to learn to love, even the things that we might assume as bad, the polarities are actually working for unity to come back to itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be working.
It could be. It could be, especially if it's all a simulation.
Yeah. Ah, yeah.
Amazing. Oh, well, I'm so curious to hear from folks listening. What's your big insight and what's your insight to action? What do you feel called
Yeah.
and moved to do?
And we hope you got some cracking codes for the game of this simulation today. Enjoy the ride.
Cheat codes to up level.
All right.
Amazing. Thanks everybody. Take care. And until next time,
Till next
stay
time.
curious.